Hello and welcome to cEDH Selvala Deck Tech and Mulligan Guide. Selvala is a legendary 2/3 elf scout, which reads, whenever a creature enters the battlefield, if it has the greatest power among creatures, draw a card. And it has green tap. Add an amount of green mana equal to the greatest power among creatures you control. So what does this deck want to do on turn 1? The main objective of this deck is to get Selvala out on turn 2. So that means on turn 1, we want to be casting stuff like Arbor Elf, Boreal Druid, Elvish Mystic, Llanowar Elves, and Utopia Sprawl, Chrome Mox, and Wild Growth, and Soulring, of course. All of these cards allow us to cast our commander on turn 2. So, the goal of this deck is pretty simple. You need a mulligan until you can get Selvala out on turn 2. The only reason you would not mulligan further is if you're on 5 or below. So if you've already mulliganed twice, you might keep the hand even if it doesn't have a turn 2 Selvala. So what does this deck want to do on turn 2? I basically said it before, but the main goal is to just play Selvala. Though sometimes, if you're in a more stacks matchup, or your opponent somehow landed a Cursed Totem or Linvala before you can cast your commander, you might think of playing a tutor to try to find a Reclamation Sage or a Kogla. So it's not always the best option to cast Selvala on turn 2. Sometimes casting an Occame Adversary or Sylvan Library will be the right turn 2 play, but 99% of the time, casting your general on turn 2 is the right play. Now, turn 3 is what I like to call the Storm. This is the turn where stuff really starts to get going. So you want to cast undercosted creatures which have big power, like Phyrexian Dreadnought, Phyrexian Soulgorger, Hunted Troll, Lupine Prototype, Sheltering Ancient. All of these cards should draw you a card on their enter the battlefield, which could not only draw you into gas, but draw you into combo pieces, but they can also help you make absurd amounts of mana with Selvala. Example of having Phyrexian Dreadnought in your hand on turn 3 is you can cast Selvala on turn 2. Turn 3, you just cast Dreadnought, tap Selvala, and all of a sudden you have 12 green mana in your mana pool. And it's only turn 3. Phyrexian Dreadnought is certainly a centerpiece of this deck, and we can use it to execute many weird harvest lines, where we can fetch it and a Eternal Witness to then get back Weird Harvest and find a combo. We can also tutor it up with Finale of Devastation. Weird Harvest is a good card, but specifically for this deck, because usually we can make enough mana to win with it. But be careful, if your opponents have 3 mana out, they might be able to get an Aven Mind Sensor, which can stop you from comboing. They can also get out a Notion Thief and stop you from comboing. And there's also this new 3 mana card coming in Commander Legends, which stops you from tutoring. So if your opponent has mana up, look at your hand and see if they can possibly tutor any cards which can stop you from comboing. Because if you do Weird Harvest for 2 or more, I can almost 100% guarantee you that you're not getting another turn if you just pass the turn. Because your opponents basically got to tutor 2 creatures for free. Tooth and Nail is another card which we can execute lines with. With the new addition of Kogla, we can get Kogla and Hyrax Tower Scout. Given that we have 1 mana up, we can get Hyrax Tower Scout to untap Selvala, add 7 mana, and then pay 2 mana to return Hyrax Tower Scout to our hand, recast it untapping Selvala, and we could do this infinite times. Another line we can also execute with Tooth and Nail is finding Teamer, Sabretooth, and Wirewood Symbiote. Wirewood Symbiote, yeah. So we can activate Wirewood Symbiote, bouncing something to our hand. We could bounce an elf to our hand, and then that can untap Selvala. Then we could recast Wirewood Symbiote and recast the elf. So all of a sudden you're in the same place, and let's say you have something with 5 or more toughness, like a Phyrexian Soul Gorger, Woodland Bellower. We also have a lot of pump spells, which can make Teamer Sabretooth have 5 or more toughness. You'll have infinite mana. And let's say you have Phyrexian Soul Gorger out. You can then bounce it as many times as you want to draw your deck. Another card which you should know how to play properly is Shared Summons. Shared Summons is a very, very powerful tutor, as it can get up to 2 cards. But it does not put them on the battlefield, so it's not as cut and dry as getting your 2 combo pieces. You need to see how much mana you have open, and also other cards you have in hand. Sometimes it might be better to just get Dreadnought and Eternal Witness with it, so then you can cast Dreadnought, make 12 mana, cast Eternal Witness, get Hyrax Kogla, and then the way you can actually win is by casting Shared Summons infinite amount of times. So the way we actually make infinite mana, there's actually a lot more ways than just Teamer, Sabretooth, and Kogla. Another one of the main ways is Staff of Domination. Staff of Domination is very, very good because not only does its 3-tap untap target creature help us make infinite mana, but it also helps us draw a deck. So to execute Staff of Domination lines, you need a creature with 6 or more toughness. Umbral Mantle does something similar to Staff of Domination, but you only need a creature with 5 or more power, as you don't have to pay the 1 extra to untap it. But it does not provide an outlet, so be careful, because even if you give, let's say, a Dork and Selvala infinite power, you're still leaving one opponent alive, and that one opponent will have no one who can interact with him, because we're playing mono green and have very little interaction, and his other 2 opponents will be dead. So be careful, because they might just win when you pass the turn. So those are the main win conditions of the deck, or those are the main ways we make infinite mana. But let's get to win conditions. Our main win condition is by destroying all of our opponent's permanents by flickering Eternal Witness with either Teamer Sabretooth or Kogla the Titan Ape. And we continuously get back Beast Within, destroy all of our opponent's permanents. Then we flicker Kogla infinite times to kill all of our opponent's beasts. And then we can destroy one of our lands, get it back with the loop I showed you earlier, to then make infinite beasts. And then to just make sure that your opponents don't cast a Terminus when it's on their turn, we can cast Finale of Devastation to give all of our beasts haste, and then swing for the win. Another way we can win is by using Relic Golem, which has an ability which, if you pay 2 mana and tap it, you can mill an opponent for 2 cards. If you untap it with either Umbral Mantle or Staff of Domination, you can make infinite mana. You can mill your opponents out. Relic Golem is very good because not only does it serve as a secondary win condition, it also serves as a fatty, which we can use to combo off, as it only costs 3 mana and has 6 power. Now let's get to what to do during certain stacks matchups. If you're against Lavinia, try to remove her at all costs. A lot of your storm spells are a lot of the spells which draw you a lot of cards, like Momentous Fall, Turn of the Wild Speaker, Shared Summons, Tooth and Nail, Vishkar's Expertise, and Natural Order. We will be casting these on turn 3, when we only have 3 mana up, so they will get countered by position would make me sacrifice a creature. So if I draw a creature off the top, I'd cast that creature and then cast Eldritch Evolution into maybe a Phyrexian Soulgorger, depending on what I draw off the top. So this hand is kind of aggressive, but is also reliant on our top decks. So I'd say I'm actually like 50-50 split on this, but I think I'd probably keep this. Let's look at our next 7. So this hand has, again, okay, so it does not have a guaranteed turn 2 Selvala, but if there's at least one blue deck at the table, I'd keep this. If there's no blue decks at the table, I would not keep this because Carpet of Flowers would be a dead card, and I think that's just detrimental enough to mull it. But if I do hit my land drops, get Selvala on turn 2, on turn 3 I can cast Finale of Devastation, binding Phyrexian Dreadnought, then I could tap Selvala making 12 mana, and then cast Momentous Fall to draw 12 cards. So that would, like Karametra's Acolyte and Priest of Titania. We can use these creatures to storm off with untapped spells, and eventually win with them with Staff of Domination or Umbral Mantle. This is good for Drannith Magistrate or anything like that. Rule of Law effects really hose this deck, but luckily we have a lot of enchantment removal in tow to get rid of them. This deck is what I like to call a manual storm deck. So you don't win by just getting infinite storm and beating your opponents. You need to manually cast spells, create a lot of mana, do it again, draw into more gas, cast the gas, and do it again. And though it may make you have very long turns, it is also a lot more fun than just doing the same loop. Because even though we win in the same way, the journey is a lot more fun with this deck than other decks just, cast two tutors and then win with Thassa's Oracle. Here, you're like, I cast a fatty, then cast Vishkar's Expertise, cast Eternal Witness, and all that. And there's a lot of really complicated loops in this deck, so if you want to really find a deck which you're going to stick with for a long time and find a deck which you're going to learn a lot of the loops in, then this is the deck for you. If you like quick, aggressive wins and don't like having to keep mana up, this is the deck for you. But if you like stacks and like controlling your opponents, then this is not the deck, because this deck focuses more on winning as fast as it can and trying to come back. Whereas stacks decks try to focus on controlling their opponents until they can win with a combo in the later turns of the game. Now let's get into mulligans. So the first hand we have has Gas, a way we can get turn 2 Selvala, and pump spells. So I'd actually keep this hand. And what I do is, depends on what I draw turn 1, I just turn 1 pass, turn 2 Chromox, Exiling Vines, or something random, which we might draw, and cast Selvala. Turn 3. So I think this is pretty obvious. Sure, there's a good amount of ramp, but there's 0 lands. You should never keep a 0 lander unless if it has Mana Crypt and one of the Moxen. So this hand has turn 2 Selvala, it has gas, it has an untapper, but it does not have any way we can make mana. So even though it has gas, it doesn't have a way we can actually make mana. So I think I'd have to ship it. This hand also doesn't have turn 2 Selvala, and it has Sheltering Ancient and Life's Legacy, which is a pretty good way to draw cards. We are on our 3rd mulligan, so if we mulligan again, we'd have to go to 4 cards. So I think I'd actually keep this. It also has Worldly Tutor, so we can find a Dreadnought and do some stuff, maybe storm off. Or we can also Worldly Tutor in response to the Sheltering Ancient's ability. So I actually don't think this hand will win turn 3, but if we mull to 4, I doubt we would win turn 3 either, so I think I would keep this hand, and I would probably bottom Priest of Titania in Greater Good, mainly because Life's Legacy serves the spot as Greater Good. Or if you see other decks at the table, I would actually ship Life's Legacy. If you see a lot of fast combo decks, I would ship Greater Good. Okay, so I think I went over a few mulligans, which kind of show you a basic guide. The things you should be looking for in each hand is an untapper, a way to make mana, a mana sink, and turn 2 Selvala. Turn 2 Selvala and a way to make mana are the most important, mainly because this deck does not have a good long game. It needs to try to pressure and win early, or it will have very low chances of winning long game. So that's why you need to get Selvala out turn 2. Hope you liked my guide, and see you later.